Hey Slowpokes, it's Taurus 101. Welcome back to World Building Wednesdays. I'm just gonna get right into it this time. This is my second take of this video, and the last one was 30 minutes, so I really don't want to do that again. So, characters of Madame Munch's Culinary Institute for the Supernaturally Gifted. The main character's name is Theo Nguyen. I pronounced that horribly. But his age is 19. His munchie is stir fry, so he can swap places with something that he's making physical contact with, rotated about the midpoints between their center of gravity. That's important. His family owns a Vietnamese restaurant, which they live above. On his 19th birthday, he received a full-ride scholarship to the Institute. He's also the main character. He uses his munchie to avoid conflict and mostly as utility. So, all of these characters, except for the professors and stuff, got a full-ride scholarship out of the middle of nowhere to Madame Munch's Culinary Institute for the supernaturally gifted. And I don't remember whether last time I said it was a year or a semester, but anyway, they get, I think it was a semester. They get 1 semester of free classes for this full-ride scholarship, and then there's a tournament where they have to cook against each other in a food battle, and then they have to fight against each other in like an actual battle, and depending on how well they do in both, decides whether or not they get to advance. And the winner of this tournament, it's like a bracket tournament. The winner of this tournament gets to stay at the school, and everyone else has to go home or pay. I mean, they can just pay, that's fine. But the scholarships go out to exclusively foodies. If you haven't watched the last episode, I recommend you go back and watch it. Anyway, during this, because otherwise this video won't make sense. So during this tournament, the contestants are allowed to pick tournament titles. For example, our next character, Tony Briggs, his title is Rigatoni. It's sort of like a superhero nickname. Rigatoni is 23. His ability is escargot, so he has like bouncy rubber shells, like rubber snail shells, that he can throw, and they absorb stuff that they make contact with. It absorbs into the shell like a snail. And he can choose to release these objects at any time, but the shell actually gets as heavy as the original object. Or, it gains the weight of it. But the thing about that is that it doesn't actually, gain mass. So, when an object's mass determines how much the force of gravity accelerates it. Or the force of gravity acts on it. So, as, the object's mass increases, the force of gravity will also increase. And if it's just sitting on the ground and not moving, then the normal force, the force keeping it from getting into the floor, will be the same as the gravity, the force of gravity, because the mass and acceleration are 0. Or the mass times acceleration is 0. The mass is positive, the acceleration is 0. Anyway, as the object's weight increases, that's just how much the normal force is acting on it. So, the normal force will increase, but the mass times acceleration is still 0. So the force of gravity doesn't increase on it, but because the normal force increases, from the reference point of the ground, the normal force on it has also increased, and it balances out so that nothing actually changes. it just would feel heavier. So what that means, the consequences of that in physics is, that's not exactly how it actually would work in physics, but it's close enough for the purposes of the World Building Wednesdays, you know? So that means that anything that the shell collides with will be hit harder because there's more weight behind that impact. But it doesn't mean that it'll fall out of the air faster, because it's not like it actually has all of that mass. The force of gravity isn't working any harder on it than it usually does. It's just got more pep in its punch, I guess. He's very chill, but he's like an analytic guy. He's also very good. Rigatoni, I mean. He's very good at, like, physics and the like, which is how he knows all of this. He uses his munchie to make things easier to carry, absorbing big and or powerful things into the shell mid-air, and he can release said thing when the target is close enough to it. He can, like, drop Acme anvils on enemies. There's Dax McIntyre, or Raspberry Daiquiri. Their ability is Mixed Cocktail. They're a very dramatic molecular mixologist. They use their munchie to deal with unexpected threats on the fly. James Prower, 18 years old. His ability is Flambe. He's a chill, cool guy with a lot of personality. He can create fire and manipulate it like pyrokinesis. He's a firebender. He just uses his powers as fire powers. He's just that awesome. Massima Luna Munch was 89 at the time of her death. She is Madame Munch. She founded Madame Munch's Culinary Institute for the Supernaturally Gifted, and her munchie was Mezzaluna. She could cause two targets to pass ideas back and forth to each other instantaneously. Not like a conversation, but just more so like, I'm thinking this, and now you have reached the same conclusion I have, and then I am now reaching the same conclusion you have, and it just sort of bounces off of each other. Her great-great-granddaughter, not double great, single great, her single great-granddaughter, Sabrina Munch, is 28 at the time of the story. Her ability is mise en place. So she can manipulate objects around her as though they were like marionettes attached to the wooden cross with all the strings on it. So she can create these wooden crosses and attach the strings to stuff around her and move it that way. It takes some effort, but she actually tricks everyone and is like, my last name is Muncie. You know, I'm just a small girl from a small town. But the reason she's there in the tournament is because she wants to become the headmistress of the Culinary Institute. Because along with the full ride scholarship you get at the end, you also get a prize. Because the school is one of them secret government sort of deals where they have all of these things, and the board of directors, ooh, they're not actually tied to the government any more than a regular university, but you get like a wish granted or something. So Sabrina wants to become the headmistress of the school, just like her great-grandmother, and then her grandmother, and then her mother. But no, because no one actually, like, knows anything about this school, they don't know that, so she's able to slip under the radar. She's warm on the outside, but heavily controlling on the inside, highly organizational, and pretty fun to be around. She just has ulterior motives. Her catchphrase is, there's a place for everything, and everything will be in its place. And that's sort of her mentality as she becomes the main antagonist of the tournament. Rosemary Jane Gaia, age 22, her ability is Pesto. She can control plants. she's a stereotypical stoner type. Made a lot of money growing and dealing drugs, and makes a lot of edibles. She comes from the Chihuahua region of Mexico, and actually has a lot of generational family trauma from there, and resorts to escapism via drugs as a coping mechanism. But she moved up into the States as a very young child, and has lived in Boston almost her entire life. Kyle Umaki, or California Roller, age 20, is tuna roll. He can shoot sushi rolls very sharp, with millimeter level accuracy. So he's got that going for him. He's just an asshole. That's his entire personality, and he's got not much else to offer than that. Fred Canola, or Fry Guy, is 18. His ability's deep fry. Any liquid causes the target that touches the target causes the target to burn, and then their skin to crisp up, becoming greasy and hydrophobic. Basically, any water or other liquid you come into contact with will deep fry you, just because he felt like it. He's a quiet but amiable guy. He's worked as a carnival caterer since he was 12 and uses environmental hazards to his advantage. There's Kevin Aitman, whose title is Cool Aitman, or Cool 8 Man, age 26. His ability is Cold Brew. He gets to take physical properties from physical objects, and turn them into like heavily concentrated liquid, that he can drink pure for potency or mix with water for extra duration. And then those attributes will go into him. Basically, he would make the best Borgs alive, just because he can like turn the durability of steel into a Mio squeezer. I don't actually know what they're called. He speaks in dad jokes to hide his many and very potent insecurities. He wears socks, sandals, cargo shorts, and Hawaiian shirts all at the same time. He's that guy. And he would wear more than one fanny pack if he was allowed to by the, albeit vague, student dress code. But since he is limited to one, he has resorted to putting multiple fanny packs inside that one. There's Jeff, spelled Jeph, whose title is Jeff, spelled Jeff, who's 40 years old. His ability is orange juice. So he can, his physical touch can corrode things and cause your brain, if he touches you, he'll cause your brain to think that you are in the worst pain ever. So you can use that as like a distraction sort of deal. He's mostly comic relief. He's a heavy hitter when he wants to be, and he doesn't mind being a side character. He's a very simple guy with very simple wants. There's Bryce Armando, whose nickname is Deli Arms. He's age 34, and he's got slow roast. He can turn his body into magma, which will harden over time, and then the obsidian can be peeled off, and the actual body part will be under there. He's brutish, but he's determined to win. Then there's Dean Jameson, whose title is Pigpen, age 45. His ability is feta cheese. Personality is my dad, and I will not be providing any more context because I think it's very funny that way. Albert Hunding, also known as Many Mincemen, is age 29. His ability is Tortellini. He can create copies of himself that have, like, it's multiple different consciousnesses, right? But it's still, like, the same consciousness, just copied over. So it's like, rather than have one cheeseburger, you can have two identical cheeseburgers. they're both like different objects, but it's like all the same stuff and flavor and presentation and whatnot. The only difference is that if the cloned cheeseburger sustains too much damage, it will explode. So the thing about Albert is that he's got a lot of trauma. He hides it with jokes as well. But the original Albert died before his 20th birthday. And the current Albert doesn't know what number clone that he is. So clones have been made at like the last second right before death so many times that the current singular clone left, which, because it's the same consciousness and same memories and all that, is technically still Albert. He just, like, if he sustains too much damage, he better clone himself before he explodes. And that's sort of his deal. Edward F. Herter, age 19, his ability is Hot Dog. He can turn projectiles and make them go in reverse, following their exact same path. He's a very silly and chaotic guy. He uses his munchie to be unpredictable, despite the fact that his munchie is the most predictable. There's Ken Tomsky, age 37, whose ability is Tong Hulu. His lifelong dream is to own a boat. He stops at nothing to achieve his goals, but every time he gets close, fate rips it away at the last second. This is actually a consequence of his munchie, Tong Hulu. Tong Hulu allows him to create invisible, imperceivable barriers between either him and something else, or just around him, or just around something else, or between something else and something else further. But these barriers aren't limited to being physical. They can also be like a mental barrier, preventing someone from thinking a certain thought or remembering something, or like a misfortune barrier where anytime something goes to happen, he can ensure that it actually does not happen. Much like what happens with his boat dream. Then the last contestant / student in this list is John Collins, age 22. His ability is Dark Roast. He can create a thick coat of oil that surrounds him, making him stronger. But the oil wears away very fast when exposed to light. He's a very annoying hipster, but his very annoying hipsterness is actually a front. He's a regular guy. He puts on that face so that he can drop it at the last moment to take advantage of the surprise of his opponent. Then there are the professors, which actually do, like, teach these students how to do the things that they do. Professor Graham Keller is, he teaches an unrelated class that no one goes to. His munchie is plating. He creates all of the arenas that the chefs cook and fight in, by making, like, a tangible illusion. But he doesn't actually, like, create mass. Like, people can still cook with the ingredients that they forage from his tangible illusions. And it'll still have all of the same texture and flavor and stuff. It'll still feel like you're eating food. But you won't gain any calories or nutrients from it. So, he cannot, unfortunately, solve world hunger. He's tried, though. There's Dr. Michael Brannigan, age 46. His ability is Applewood Smoked. Applewood Smoked, the munchie, can create a thick fog around you or something else that inhibits sight and breathing and smells like bacon. He teaches the savory classes. So students are lumped in via not their main, like, type of munchie, but by their subclass of munchie. And the reason for this is that if they were all lumped in based on if their munchie was convection, or circulation, then there would be too much difference or too much homogeneity in the experiences that those classmates share, if that makes sense. Like, if one class was just all of the conduction people, all of their munchies would be about hitting stuff real hard, or making physical objects do different things. And they wouldn't be able to see, like, any sort of variation on that. Their entire, like, mindset would be, hit thing real good. And the school really wants to discourage that way of thinking. Or that one way of thinking, is that you only have one thing to do. Because that's what cooking is. It's adaptation and reaction to options. So instead they're lumped in by flavor, so it's still like a similar vibe, right? All of the sweet things will have sweet vibes to it. Like, cold brew, mixed cocktail, preserves, tonghulu, blanche, puff pastry, peanut butter, lemonade, mixed nuts, peppermint, mise en place, bubble tea, breakfast, orange juice, olive oil, all that stuff. That would be all in, like, the sweet classes. So it's all, like, a similar vibe, but there's more variation in how it's accomplished. Professor Terrace Harvest, age 38, his ability is olive oil. He can remove friction from an object, which, very self-explanatory. He teaches the sweet classes. Professor Tao Shiso, age 58, his ability is TV dinner. He can pause, rewind, and fast forward, either cooking or munchies. So he can make your munchie act faster, go backwards, or stop completely in its tracks. And can also do the same thing to food. Make things cook faster, uncook things, or stop them from cooking. Dr. Berlin, age 45's ability is King Crab. King Crab, his arms can grow as long as he wants. They get heavier, exponentially, or not exponentially, logarithmically, the longer he goes. So, like, orders of magnitude. Like, extending them by a foot, right? That would make them twice as heavy. Extending them by another foot, that'd make it, like, 10 times as heavy as they originally were. And expanding it by another foot would make it, like, 40 times as... Anyway. But also, King Crab, he can't drop stuff by accident. It's a very minor ability, but it's there. He teaches the applied culinary arts classes, and not like applied culinary arts like it is in the real world. It's more so like, hey, if you're in the middle of nowhere and you have to forage for these ingredients, how are you going to do it while fighting off 7 armed bandits at once? Sort of deal. So it's like cooking and munchie combat and combat cooking and munchie cooking all just sort of lumped into one, because all of the classes are going to have cooking in them. Culinary arts is just spread over all of the different classes. It's just this one is how to apply all of the things that you've learned into, like, the field. Professor Faring, age 48, his ability is preserves. He can take the strength out of things and turn it into physical strength, which he can then use. So he can take your mental strength and turn it into his physical strength. He can take the, like a very potent flavor and make it weaker, and then he'll grow stronger, and stuff like that. He'll make a very bright light dimmer, and he'll grow stronger from that. Stuff like that. He teaches the business classes, like restaurant management, hospitality, stuff like that. Which actually a lot of the students really like. Then there's Professor Seema, age 56. Her ability is peppermint. so she can create icy storms and cold lightning just out of nowhere. And she teaches the baking classes. And that's all the characters that I've written out. Next week, I think we're gonna go more into the plot of the story of Madame Munch's Culinary Institute for the Supernaturally Gifted. And that one's probably gonna be way shorter. And if you guys absolutely want to, get in the comments and yell at me to make another one outlining all of the munchies that I have written out ever. Because if you don't, I'm just going to skip over those. Because while I like them, there are so many, and it would be so long, and it'd take so many weeks. Yeah, I think that's going to do it this time. Thank you guys so much for watching. Make sure to like and subscribe if you think I deserve any of those things. Or don't, if you think I don't. Make sure you ring this notification bell on your way out. She works very hard informing you that 3 times a year I actually upload something. And if you can set your notification settings to all while you're at it, that would save her on paperwork, me on labor costs, and everyone a whole lot of stress. Thank you guys so much for watching World Building Wednesdays, and I will see you next week. Have a good one. Bye.